The world of Serina, 10 million years post-establishment, is a warm, rich, and prospering one. Birds, insects, fish, grasses, and flowers have speciated explosively to fill the ecological vacuum of their new world, forming a myriad of rich biomes worldwide, both familiar and entirely unique to this world. With a climate that is tropical in all but the most polar of regions, with even these being only equivalent to the temperate broadleaf forests of Earth, conditions are, at this time, ideal for colonizing species. However, Serina's current mild climate comes at a price. Global rainfall levels during the Hypostacene, particularly the latter of the era, are considerably lower than those on Earth, a result of relatively flat and comparable thin landmasses over which air flows rapidly, with storms often bypassing land entirely, blowing from one sea to the next before releasing rain. While Serina at this point still lacks widespread desert, a gradual trend began immediately following the abandonment of the planet towards aridity. Following 5 to 6 million years of almost complete dominion over land, bamboo groves begin to recede to more coastal environments, where rainfall levels are more sufficient to nurture widespread forest, leaving inland regions the domain of prairie grasses and flowering plants, among them sunflowers, clover, and dandelion derivatives, which are better adapted towards lengthy periods of drought. Rainforest, or its equivalent, is the rarest biome present on Serina, occurring only sporadically along shoreline environments or in the shadows of the moon's few large mountain ridges, where coastal clouds are trapped and their water collected. In central Anciskan, however, there does exist one notable region of high rainfall occurring despite no major mountains in the immediate vicinity, due to the region's extremely low elevation, several hundred feet below sea level. Here, one finds an enormous valley that is growing wider by the century as the continent is torn by continental drift, being gradually pulled apart into two by continental forces, with a significant fault line running directly through its center, east to west. Eventually, the landmass will have split into two, with the southern portion of Anciskan colliding with the north of Stevlandia, forming another large island continent. With the ground so low here, the plains of this valley are the final resting place for all rains from both continents, which gradually flow over hundreds of miles of savanna both north and south to settle here in the largest floodplain in the world. Bamboo flourishes here, as do the highest diversity of flowering plants on Earth. Several thousand charted species now diverged from clovers alone, which grow large and colorful in the absence of significant competition. Wetland-adapted sunflowers are present, but grasses are dominant here, with dense thickets popping up wherever conditions allow, providing food for countless small invertebrates and feeding and nesting habitat for tens of millions of birds. From one have come many. Behold, the banquet of canary diversity of the Anciskan floodplains, 10 million years post-establishment. Womblers, order Passeriformes, family Fringillidae, subfamily Barroserinae, roughly dim-witted canary, in reference to the small head-to-body ratios of these large terrestrial birds. Genus Barrocerinus. Species illustrated Barrocerinus magnificus, the greater red-crowned warbler. Towering above all fellows and feeding almost exclusively on the foliage of bamboo, some of the largest living land animals of the time are of this ecoregion. 350-pound herbivorous behemoths, a megafaunal family known only on this continent, the womblers. Standing up to 7.5 feet tall, they stand almost pillar erect on thick-set, trunked limbs, their bodies inflexible and towering. Their once useful wings, now entirely useless and almost completely absent. They are slow and plodding, very steady on their feet, for if they fall over, they will find it most strenuous to right themselves again, and in boggy conditions, perhaps impossible altogether, though they are highly buoyant and able to float well in water. Though by megafaunal standards they're not huge compared to their ancestors, which may have weighed less than 3 ounces, they have increased in size by several thousand times and have inflated to such sizes at an unprecedented rate. Without predators to concern them, they have evolved no ability to move quickly and amble methodically, eating almost every hour of the day and night to provide themselves with enough energy just to survive on, using large and heavy-set shearing bills to cut shoots and stems, which are swallowed whole to be broken down with gastroliths. They are more or less defenseless and nest upon the ground, hatching a single chick from a 15-pound egg every 3rd year, which is still entirely altricial and dependent on parental care, laying in a crude nest of grass on their bellies, unfeathered until about 5 months of age, and requiring warmth from the parents at almost all times, and gaping for food until it is over 100 pounds. Only then can its legs be developed sufficiently so as to support its weight, a weight it will take 16 months to reach on such a poor diet, almost entirely the shoots of bamboo, as it is provided. Even after it can stand, it will not feed itself adequately for more than another year, relying on its parents for its survival for a total period of almost 30 months. Sexual maturity is not reached for another 4 years, though lifespans can extend a number of decades, for as adults there exists no land animal sufficiently powerful to harm them, save for one another. A lack of predator fear has gone hand in hand with a lack of fear for conflicts in this clade. While otherwise incredibly peaceable, males will often fight one another to the death over females during nesting seasons, and even outside them, and will casually engage in lasting and potentially deadly battle for the most trivial of purpose, simply as a matter of course. So intense are the fighting instincts of the males that, in a most ironic twist, despite having evolved to have no predators, male mortality is incredibly high, with 80% of all animals dying from fight-related injury, most commonly a leg shattered by a powerful blow of the opponent's bill, before their 20th birthday, a lifespan that females, much more docile and herding animals, may outdo by 3 times. It is so that the very lack of predators in the Wombler's environment, which require the evolution of a healthy and natural level of fear to survive alongside in a normal environment, have resulted not only in animals which have no predator fear, but no fear at all, and subsequently none of the natural inhibition of animals in more natural environments to avoid unnecessary conflict. To a Wombler, every conflict must be fought, and there is no flight, only fight. It has been noted that the high-intensity, intraspecific aggression of the male Wombler draws very close parallels to behavioral disorders sometimes found in dogs bred to be low fear. A lack of fear, without very careful management, can easily go hand in hand with a lack of fight inhibition, with the potential existing to produce truly dangerous animals. It should be noted that, like most birds of Serina, the instinctive tendency to sing, both in courtship and territorial aggression, has not been lost. Male Womblers of most species are very avid singers, with their songs being almost identical on inspection to those of modern canaries, but slowed down 5 to 10 times and brought down several octaves, as if slowed with audio editing software. The impression furthered by the throat and bill of the singing male, which move in equally slowed measure as if the live animal is being seen via high-resolution, slow-motion film. Axebills. Order Passeriformes. Family Fringillidae. Subfamily Dromaeocerinae, or running serin. Genus Magnorhynchus, or giant beak. Species illustrated Magnorhynchus imperator, or the imperial axebill. Axebills, which, along with other birds of the Dromaeocerinae, diverged from Womblers and others of the Barrocerinae 6 million years ago, are a widespread genus of relatively large, bustard to emu-sized, flightless ground birds which feed predominantly on coarse grasses and in which the male exhibits a considerably enlarged bill casque used in intraspecific display, but not combat, for the bill, while large and seemingly strong, is in fact very fragile and composed almost wholly of keratin. While both groups descend from a common flightless ancestor, the two groups have gone down different paths, with the Barrocerinae having become overall large and stocky birds, while the Dromaeocerinae have become more lightly built and capable runners. For while Womblers and kin are sedentary browsers of stable environments, Dromaeocerins, axebills included, are on the whole highly migratory animals of the open plains, adapted to cover very wide distances throughout the year as they follow seasonal rains and the flushes of green growth they bring to the savannas. Found throughout Anciskan and central striata, flocks of the imperial axebill, the most common species of the time period, may cover over 1,000 miles in a year in flocks several million strong as they follow the rains, relying on unknown cues to find them. it is possible their sense of smell may be of more use than most birds. It is only when they find them that the normally highly gregarious birds will disband from their herds and come into breeding condition, with the males molting from normally dull browns and grays into a rich attire of bright reds and yellows. Males form leks, gathering by the thousand in choice meadows and displaying, flashing their brilliant colorful neck patches and belting out lengthy and varied sequences of bubbly song, having the best chance of procuring a mate by having the largest and most outsized bill casque, a signal that any male who can carry such a handicap and still survive must be of excellent genes, and most varied motif. Every lady loves a little music to set the mood. A hen, her bill far smaller than her mate's and her plumage less exuberant, will still likely mate with a number of attractive males, ensuring that of them all, only the best manage to fertilize her eggs, which are laid in groups of 2 or 3 directly upon the ground and incubated as well as fed solely by the hen. Following the breeding season, males band together into large bachelor herds until the females return with young in tow several months later. While they have few predators, dromaeosaurians have nevertheless already undergone significant adaptations towards a precocial reproductive strategy in recent millennia, as increasingly seasonal, dry climatic conditions mean that sizable quantities of food are impermanent and sporadic. As a result, a lengthy time period of juvenile helplessness just isn't possible when food supplies in any one region may only remain for several months. While smaller flying birds can circumvent this by rapid growth from egg to fledgling in only a few weeks. For a bird so large, complete maturity is impossible in such a small time frame, which is why dromaeosaurians are notable for hatching out of their eggs fully covered in soft down and able to stand and walk after only 10 to 15 days. While they will be dependent on their mothers for food and protection from the elements and predatory attack for far longer, as long as they are mobile, the young can follow their parents to new pastures as they green, to continue the rearing process elsewhere. Some species of dromaeosaurians will even carry their young upon their backs, nestled in the plumage, when they are very young and unable to walk far on their own. Most axebills, typical for the clade, are omnivorous with a preference for plant matter, using their large beaks to tear grasses and fibrous flower stalks, which consume only marginal quantities of animal protein in the form of insects and invertebrates, though young are offered considerable quantities of crickets and other meaty insects during rearing, when rapid growth and development demands increased protein intake. Aardgeese, order Passeriformes, family Fringillidae, subfamily Dromaeosaurinae, genus Solomornis, ground-living bird. Species illustrated: Solomornis valavivis, valley aardgoose. Aardgeese are basal, highly successful dromaeosaurians native to all major landmasses on Serina during the late Hypostocene, with the exception of Stevlandia and extreme southern Kari. Named for their flightlessness, and diet of soft grasses and water plants, not for any tendency towards burrowing. They split off from the group very early on, relatively speaking, roughly 5 million years ago, when the climate was marginally wetter, allowing these birds of floodplains and marshland to spread worldwide before becoming isolated to a number of smaller habitats surrounded by drier seasonal savannas less conducive to their survival. By and large, they are conservatively colored, medium-sized flightless birds ranging from 10 pounds at their extreme smallest to upwards of 80 pounds at their best, closely related to axebills and very nearly resembling the ancestral form from which these and other more derived dromaeosaurians evolved from. Behaviorally, they are very alike others of their clade, though unlike axebills, this species does not lek. Instead, males control small harems of 3 to 5 hens, the young of which he assists in rearing. The chicks of this genus are similarly precocial compared to other canaries, with this species too engaging in transporting the young upon their back. Aardgeese are predominantly birds of terrestrial but near water habitats, but swim well, being plump and buoyant, and can cross rivers and lakes relatively easily thanks to their slightly webbed feet. While they can survive away from large sources of water and may cross large distances of dry land seasonally, they rely largely on high-protein algae and aquatic invertebrates to rear their young, and do not breed successfully in drier upland environments. Hens lay 4 to 5 eggs at a time, but will rarely wean more than 3, as the youngest is often bullied by its older siblings, for the hen begins sitting as soon as the first egg is laid, meaning this chick hatches up to a week before its younger relatives, and often takes their share of the food. The nest is a simple structure of grass and dried mud, often placed near water. Both sexes of aardgeese sing, the hen joining the male during courtship, though the song is comparably basic to the ancestral canary's melody and highly repetitive, a short series of 3 to 8 whistles and clicks repeated with very little variation. When startled or upset, aardgeese will honk plaintively and will growl and hiss if further pressed. Aardgeese are normally social flocking birds, though opposing males may battle during courtship season, kicking at one another with their sharp hind claws. These battles rarely cause lasting injury. Stiltskins, Order Passeriformes, Family Fringillidae, Subfamily Oravora, shore eater, Genus Oravoravis, shore-eating bird, Species illustrated, Oravoravis purpuripectus, the violet-breasted stiltskin. A portmanteau of stilt and siskin, long-legged proto-wading birds, which range in size similarly to modern plovers, are found throughout most Serinian continents in a variety of habitats, particularly coastal, where they feed on algae, water plants, seed, and small invertebrates stirred up from shallow water or tall grass with the long legs and pointed bill. Still capable flyers, they are highly migratory in some locales, nesting far towards the poles and wintering near the equator. They breed near water in the branches of taller herbaceous plants, building a sturdy nest of twigs, and the young are typically altricial for songbirds, though born with a coat of down and with eyes that will open after only 2 days. Some stiltkins sing, and some have largely lost this habit, their calls reverting to simple screams, chirps, and warbles. Most stiltskins are highly gregarious, breeding in colonies. There is little to no male-to-male aggression, and the species is seasonally monogamous. Gallowalts, order Passeriformes, family Fringillidae, subfamily Undecopterinae, rounded-winged, genus Galeopteryx, or chicken wing, genus illustrated Galeopteryx magnerosa, or the big red gallowalt. Opportunistic omnivores, gallowalts occur on all Serinian landmasses by the late Hypostacenic, derived from the same terrestrial, predominantly plant-eating stock, which would later give rise to both barocerans and dromaeocerans. While these groups would lose flight entirely, gallowalts, which are generally no larger than turkeys, still retain it, albeit only on a basic level and for only short-distance use, preferring to scratch around the soil for their food. Gallowalts eat mainly seeds, berries, and insects, but will also consume fallen nestlings, tender green shoots, and snails if the opportunity arises. Young gallowalts are less well-developed at hatching than the young of dromaeocerans, but grow more quickly and can run at 3 weeks of age, fly at 8. Both the male and female care for the young, typically 3 or 4, with males sometimes taking 2 mates at once, but frequently being monogamous for a given season. Male gallowalts attract mates with an extremely complex song, sung while perched above the ground in an open space, in which they combine hundreds of different verses of both their own creation as well as sounds and calls mimicked from other birds and even insects. While singing, males add a visual aspect to their performances in the form of a large, divided throat pouch colored brightly blue and red, which they inflate while singing. The same structure also occurs in hens, though considerably smaller, and hens will often sing, albeit less skillfully, during the height of the mating season if a male cannot be found, in hopes to contact one. They are extremely attuned mimics, and both sexes will also utilize the copied calls of larger predatory birds to frighten off smaller sorts that may harm their eggs or young. The hen and cock are typically very similar in appearance, with the males being marginally larger and slightly more colorful. Qualts, order Passeriformes, family Fringillidae, subfamily Undecopterinae, rounded-winged, genus Corpulavis, plump bird, species illustrated Corpulavis pratabscondens, or the little prairie qualt, hooded gallowalt. Qualts, several species of which are also referred to as gallowalts, are a genus of Undecopterine ground canaries, native to central and southern Anciskan, down through Stevlandia, closely related to Galeopteryx, which approach more closely the flightless weight-to-wingspan barrier, and which almost never fly, preferring to run around close to the ground in tall grass, eating mainly seeds, flowers, and the larvae of beetles. Behaviorally, otherwise, they are very similar, though the song of the male is much more simple and does not involve mimicking. Hens sing rarely, if at all. Nests are often on the ground in plain sight, though in predator-rich areas, simple structures may be built in crudely fashioned depressions, in soft sand, and hidden with foliage. Males typically mate with half a dozen hens and help assist them all in feeding the young, with the hens doing all of the incubating. Shriekers. Order Passeriformes. Family Fringillidae. Subfamily Raptucerinae, or thief canary. Genus Rhynchaudax, bold beak. Species illustrated Rhynchaudax vulgaris, common shrieker. Shriekers are a genus of thrush-sized, very bold and omnivorous canaries, and among the earliest predators to evolve in the Serenian ecosystem. While today some forms have further specialized in this regard, basal shriekers remain as one of the planet's most adaptable and wide-ranging bird groups, able to survive in almost all habitats and able to consume nearly anything, from seeds to fruit and berries, as well as insects, eggs, nestlings, and carrion. They are clever and aggressive birds that are particularly dangerous to other birds' nestlings, and they are very noisy and raucous birds, with harsh screaming calls that can be deafening when the birds gather in large flocks. Males will mate with multiple hens and help provide for them all to a minimal extent. The female builds the nest and incubates in a tussock of grass several meters off the ground. Nestlings grow and mature at a fast rate typical for small songbirds. Canaries and canary thrushes. Order Passeriformes. Family Fringillidae. Genus Serinus. Genus Ciscus. Species illustrated Serinus nigrensis, black-cheeked canary. Ciscus caudrosa, rosy-tailed canary thrush. Ciscus albus, false white-eye. The black-cheeked canary and rosy-tailed canary thrush are small, sparrow-sized songbirds native only to the central Anciskan grasslands. Whilst many birds following introduction to the moon of Serina quickly diverged into distinct and new niches, a far greater number have kept to much more basal niches and appearances. Very basic true finches, even of the same or very closely related genus to the ancestral canary, are widely abundant throughout Serina, with some species having changed very little at all fundamentally over the course of their evolution. The black-cheeked canary is a typical, mostly herbivorous seed eater with a melodious song which nests in low-lying clumps of grass and feeds its young, which fledge at 20 days similarly to other finches, predominantly insects and seeds. The canary thrush, one member of a more widely spread bird genus, is like most of its new genus, an insectivore, filling the niches of warblers and thrushes on Earth, and consuming only minimal quantities of plant matter. The little false white-eye, another species of canary thrush, is similar, though preys more on beetle larvae, worms, and gastropods, especially slugs, rather than adult insect prey. gleaning these from the undersides of leaves with a particularly thin, pointed bill. Doodlebirds. Order Passeriformes. Family Fringillidae. Subfamily Myrmecophagorinae, ant-eating birds. Genus Acurnychus, needlebeak. Species illustrated Acurnychus stevii, olive doodlebird. Acurnychus volans, primitive doodlebird. Serina's first true response to the overpopulation of ants, doodlebirds form a specious clade of borderline flightless. Some species can flutter minimally, others are grounded with significantly reduced wings, even within the same genus. Insectivorous canaries, which have adapted to consume almost nothing but ants, both adults and larvae, gathering the insects not only from their nests, which it disturbs by digging with its large clawed feet, moving away the sand with their wings, but simply running about the ground with long, thickly scaled legs to guard from bites, and up the stems of foliage, nipping up any ants they come across, thousands in a day. Typically no larger than a pigeon, they are commonplace in most environments, but very easily missed, being very fast and subdued in color, able to disappear into tall grass without a trace in front of your eyes. Doodlebirds nest in dense thickets of grass at ground level and rear their young exclusively on the larvae and eggs of ants, particularly honey ants. The young hatch blind and naked and grow quickly, though slower than smaller songbirds, fledging in 36 days, after which they run with their parents for another 2 weeks. During this time, parents will feign injury to lead would-be predators away from their young in a manner similar to killdeers. Doodlebirds are unique among Serinin birds of the era in that they form lasting pair bonds of several years to life, though they will readily take new mates should something happen to their previous. Male doodlebirds no longer sing so much as coo in the manner of doves. It is a pleasant, plaintive call, but only of a few drawn-out notes. The little primitive doodlebird, as well as several related species, are, as their names suggest, the least specialized members of the genus, consuming significant amounts of beetles and crickets, in addition to ants, and being capable flyers for short distances. Larger species, such as the olive doodlebird, are entirely flightless, though can glide to an extent. Dougals. Order Passeriformes. Family Fringillidae. Subfamily Chimbammergornae, dipping boat bird. Genus Chimbammergornis. Species illustrated Chimbammergornis inelegans, inelegant dougal. Dougals are a diverse group of semi-aquatic canaries that feed predominantly on aquatic insects and water plants. Plump and stout, their bills are large and serrated, adapted to scraping algae, and their feet are webbed. Some of the first canaries on Serina to take the plunge into aquatic environments. They're awkward swimmers at best, not sure whether to use their wings or feet or both or neither for propulsion, and prefer to stay along the shoreline. Caught in flux, they're awkward on land and even more awkward on water, though have some leeway, for they are able to exploit a niche by feeding underwater that is otherwise entirely unused by other bird species. Some dugals can still fly, while others have lost the ability. About the size of a mallard duck, dugals are still confined to a dependent altricial childhood, though not quite so much as ancestral canaries, with the chicks being unable to swim until 3 weeks of age, being hidden until then in a large rounded ground nest of grasses and mud in which the hen alone incubated the eggs. The male and female both feed the young. The male is generally not a good parent and often leaves his hen for a new mate a few weeks after they hatch, leaving the hen alone to parent them. 6 eggs may be laid, and if both parents help feed this many may fledge. But in cases where the hen must mother alone, half of the young typically do not survive to this point. Dugals are interesting in that singing has been completely lost, and the male has almost no courtship beyond a few simple chirps, simply jumping on the hen to copulate and affirming the pair bond in a most unceremonious manner. Sunflower barrens are a sort of biome in progress, a rather unnatural and impermanent forest type that won't last indefinitely. With the soil around them inhibited from colonization by other plant species due to the toxic tannins released by the plants of the sunflower family, these woodlands are more the result of the sunflower's adaptable nature in an environment without competition than a lasting ecosystem type. Until other plant species come to better tolerate their presence in the soil, they are abnormally lacking in floral biodiversity and subsequently that of animals too, thus their common name. For much of the year, they're virtual green deserts, alive, beautiful, but almost wholly lacking in food, with only a small number of insects feeding on the foliage, in turn providing food for a relatively poor bird population. Outside the autumn crop, drawing in a brief flush of migrants off the grasslands, they're inhabited permanently by almost no animal beyond occasional wanderers from adjacent forest or grassland environments. The plants are coarse, fibrous, and irritating to the digestive tracts of all but the most specialized herbivores, of which there are still fairly few in regards to birds. And in winter, when the petals fall and the leaves wither, the dried stalks offer little shelter from wind or weather. Among the only permanent residents of any note are various species of large mole crickets, which fill the approximate niches of rodents, nibbling on roots and tubers underground through the hard times, and gathering sizable stores of fallen seeds in subterranean caches when they come available. Unlike most crickets today, Serina species often live several seasons, thus their large sizes, provided they are able to nestle deep enough in the soil to avoid frost in more temperate climates. Even if they are killed in winter slumber, however, most species will have bred by the end of their first summer, leaving their eggs in the dirt to hatch and begin the next generation with the coming of spring. For the few birds that nest in the sunflower barrens, a healthy breeding season depends on the size of the spring hatching and subsequent migration of young mole crickets, which occurs en masse above the ground. The crickets, which hatch at just under a centimeter in length, have evolved to all emerge at once and swamp their predators with the hopes that a few individuals manage to survive and spread out to new territories successfully in the confusion. With over 95% of hatchlings being taken in the first 2 weeks of the hatching season. Hatching occurs at any time in the spring, following 2 or 3 weeks of steady warm temperatures. But if there has been a poor crop of seeds the prior autumn, many adults may not have been able to take in enough protein to breed, and the following year's hatching will be small or non-existent. But if there has been a poor crop of seeds the prior autumn, many adults may not have been able to take in enough protein to breed, and the following year's hatching will be small or non-existent. In these poor years, which occur often every 10 years or so, many nestling birds, with their eggs incubated intentionally to hatch them out at the same time as the crickets, will starve to death before the next glut of insects, in the form of less hardy beetle larvae and aphids, awaken several weeks later. The sunflowers, though they bloom only for a short 3-week window in midsummer, nevertheless produce so much pollen and nectar at once during this brief flush that entire colonies of a few specialized species of honey ants, an ant clade which have become more or less stingless bees in the absence of the real thing, are able to make a living within the forest, storing up their entire year's worth of food during this time, thanks to workers which are hatched only weeks before the predicted boom, and which die almost immediately after the petals wither, ensuring that they use as little of the precious food as possible after gathering it to feed the queen. Alongside a small number of flightless workers, she will then bide her time until the next summer, with the queen, large and immobile in adulthood, doing little more than lying in near dormancy for most of this time, as her housekeepers maintain the integrity of the burrow. Due to the extremely short duration of the food supply and the need to reserve it so meticulously throughout the rest of the year, the queens of species that survive in this habitat only lays eggs twice per year, one series of clutches before the bloom, which will hatch to become the flying food gatherers, and one right after, which consists of fertile drones and new queens, which will gorge on the season's harvest before flying off to mate and settle into their own new colonies, taking with them in specialized baskets upon their hind legs just enough pollen and honey for the female to rely on until the next spring. A surprise lies in store for the males shortly after, whom, after choosing a mate and constructing their first home together in a patch of soft soil, will mate with her only once before being cannibalized and fed upon, his body providing the boost of protein she will need come spring to lay her first clutch of eggs. Stored sugars within subterranean honey ant colonies in the sunflower barrens are among the only rich food source available for animals outside the seeding season, and are occasionally pilfered by opportunistic sweet-toothed birds that pass through the barrens outside of choice season. They are spread out and often difficult to locate, however, and do not make up a significant part of any one creature's diet. With no creature beyond a few other small arthropods, such as the nest-parasitic dewdrop beetle, a cuckoo ladybird which favors this species as a host, eating both their eggs as larvae and the sugary food stores as adults, specialized to feed from them.